Alright, hey guys, what is going on? So, this time I did say I wasn't gonna come back at first for a movie review, but I had to see this film, The Smashing Machine, A24 release film directed by Benny Safdie, starring Dwayne Johnson, Emily Blunt, Bas Rutten, Ryan Bader, etc., etc. MMA fighter Mark Kerr reaches the potential of his UFC fighting career, but faces personal hardships along the way. So, going into this movie, I'm looking like uh, I really didn't have much expectations going forward. I had a feeling. I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's The Rock going to play, the typical Rock, is in the film. But if you look at and when I look at the design of the film and like the makeup and the prosthetics, that he had to look exactly similar to Mark Kerr, as you can see in the cover of the film here. And also, when I saw it, I can see Benny Safdie looking at a lot of, I think you could tell he had a lot of aspirations and inspirations from the documentary of the same name, The Smashing Machine of Mark Kerr, because it felt like a lot of, especially in the beginning, of older footage of a lot of mixed martial arts fight scenes that Mark Kerr, after he had won, the world heavyweight belt, and he pretty much had a long fighting streak going on. But what happened was, you know, and I'll go into a little bit of the in my pros and cons. But he had a little bit of hardships going on because of the steroid usage, the drug usage, to keep himself, energized and keep him like more or less intertwined with, continuing to buffle up. And you can tell he had to gain and put on 30 pounds of muscles in order for him to be, because Mark Kerr is a big dude. He's like what, 6'2", 6'3", 255 pounds. So he had to put on at least 30 pounds of muscle just to actually conform and confine to the style of which Mark Kerr had done. And also the fight scenes and the overall like choreography of it. It felt, it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel contrived or conforming to any kind of like typical sports drama like norms. It felt as if you saw Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Mark Kerr, like embodied and so far just entrenched and engulfed into this role as Mark Kerr. And he also, because of the makeup and the mistakes and everything, him being in this role, he felt a lot unrecognizable at certain points, especially back then in the 90s, especially back in 97, as he was more or less in Phoenix and more or less, had the all swagged out hair and everything. And also just looking at it from the perspective of just like, especially going back and forth with a lot of, foreign fighters, foreign fighters in Spanish and, Filipinos, like a lot of these different MMA fighters that he was in the ring with. And also in the wrestling combative style, because kind of kicks to the head and knees to the stomach, and knees to, like, they try to limit those once you got into the early 2000s, because that kind of style was, a lot of fans were complaining and certain people were complaining. Media was criticizing it at the time because it was a bit too great, and it was a bit too actual wrestlers were getting injured off of that. So, but also what I really also like also is the chemistry that he had with Dwayne Johnson, as Mark Kerr had with Don Staples, played by Emily Blunt. You can tell that if you ever been in a toxic relationship, and you can see once you get to the end of the first act and right into the second act, you can tell the toxicity in that relationship was gonna rear its ugly head, and it rear its ugly head as it did. The smashing of, a well no the smashing of like the smashing of a plate or the smashing, just objects, blunted objects in the film. Like, you can just tell that certain things were going on. You felt the dramatic tension between both of them and the melodramatic, presence that Emily Blunt had as Don Staples. That she was trying to push him. She took care of him, but she was also trying to push him and move forward and into becoming what he wanted to accomplish in his dreams of becoming the best MMA fighter, UFC fighter in the world. Mark Kerr did. But his other best friend, played by Brian Bader as Mark Coleman, did, as he ultimately end up, when you see the film, end up winning the prize. Ultimately end up winning the prize and end up having his name being in the limelight, being in the spotlight, and he ended up winning the grand prize and end up winning the overall grand finale of the trophy. So I really do like certain things as far as the character performances from everyone, from Emily Blunt as Donna Staples and Don Staples and Dwayne Johnson as Mark Kerr. This is probably his best performance I've seen from him, probably since The Rundown and probably since Be Cool. It's probably one of his better performances of his career, and he definitely got himself, in my opinion, in the running as a running candidate for Oscar performance at the Academy Awards. I think that this role and this performance will push him into that leading role at the Academy Awards for Best Actor, man, because he definitely knocked it out of the park with his performance. It was absolutely outstanding. Now, the pros and the cons for this film is going to be a mixed bag, because they're going to both kind of intertwine with each other. The pros for this movie is, and Liam, hey, what's going on? How you doing? But yeah, the pros for this movie, and yeah, what's going on, Liam? I'm just talking about the smashing machine, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Mark Kerr, and kind of like MMA fighters. Oh, Lavonda, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Yeah, I'm just talking about the smashing machine as well. With Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Mark Kerr. It's based upon the documentary of the same name. So, and it's directed by Benny Safdie, the guy that did Good Time and Uncut Gems, two of my favorite movies of that year. So he's a really good filmmaker. Does really good crime thrillers. But anyways, getting back to the to my pros and cons. So my biggest pro throughout the film is number one. I do really enjoy the characters. I really do like the fight choreography between Mark Kerr and certain other UFC and MMA fighters. And I do really like the style and the essence of it. And it also, my other big pro is the music, the overall musical score. That's another big pro, because one, you can feel the dramatic theme, especially where it cuts to a scene where Mark Kerr is, feeling like he's, as he had to have a really long recovery due to his usage of the steroids. And then also it cuts from that scene, and then it cuts to a dramatic tension scene between him and Dawn, his girlfriend. And then you can feel that theme music there, and it felt like it was just, they was both at the brink of it all, and they was really giving, like, and it was on like the cutting edge. It felt like they was on the cutting edge, and it was on like the cutting room floor. Like, it felt like they was there at both of their breaking points in their life, and both were transitioning and going in totally different directions. And I felt like the musical score added to the third act as well of the film, especially once you saw Ryan Bader as Mark Coleman. And you felt like as he won the actual championship, when it cut to a scene with him celebrating, and then when it cut to Mark Kerr as he looks up and sees the highlights of his friend Mark Coleman winning, it felt like the music really added to the overall toxic relationship, the relationship between him and his best friend, and then him and his trainer. So it felt like it was there, and so I really do like that. I really do like that part about it. So my overall cons of the film, my biggest negative is, number one, I do think the storytelling was a bit, and the subplots was a bit lightweight. And what I mean by lightweight is, it felt like they didn't go enough detail into the problems that Mark Kerr had with his steroid usage and how he got there. And I don't really feel like a lot of critics and a lot of fans are gonna have an issue, and it so much is in the film, because I feel like it kind of has this same problem as a lot of movies this year. They rush into a relationship between Don and Mark Kerr, but it never really was fully explained. So I feel like certain subplots, they've rushed into it instead of really naturally, organically feeling like they are fully committed into each other. So it didn't feel like a buy-in, and it didn't really feel like a buy-in nor a payoff. It felt kind of forced, and it felt kind of empty and hollow. And then that's number one. And then number two, I felt of my biggest cons is, number two, I feel like although I did like the overall fight choreography and fight scenes, I didn't feel like we got enough of it. I didn't feel like we got enough of it. And I felt like there were certain fight scenes to show, Mark Kerr had a resurgence coming back. And I didn't feel like we had enough showing of how he got there and how he won and how he became, bigger than what he was. And I felt like that was a bit too half-baked and a bit too undercooked. And then the third and last negative I will say is, I feel like certain times you didn't have that flavor of the direction from Benny Safdie. I felt like his direction of the film was a bit off-putting, a bit off-kilter. It didn't really feel like he put as much or all of it into this film like he did for other crime thrillers like Uncut Gems and Good Time. I feel like this kind of feels like nothing of what Benny Safdie would have done. And you would think a sports drama film, it would be something that as far as a new direction for him, you would think he would probably execute a little bit better, but it felt like he didn't really do that, or didn't really take his time to me. And I felt like there were certain scenes that felt cut and paste, and it felt like it was trying to take from the documentary rather than being his own standalone sports biopic, if that makes sense. And I felt like I've seen this done in other films, especially more recently, and a couple of years ago, I might add, called Magazine Dreams with Jonathan Majors as Killian Maddox. That film was a lot better as far as storytelling and connected beats and connected tissue between Killian Maddox, his ailing grandfather, and everything like that. So that film was better to me as far as the story plots and the storytelling and everything connecting more than this film. And other sports drama films like The Wrestler and The Fighter, I felt like were better as far as storytelling, and it felt like subplots and everything. It felt like everything connected with those. This film, it didn't really get there for me as far as that aspect of it. And I felt like it felt like it was half-baked, a bit undercooked, and a bit too paint by the numbers. So overall, those are my thoughts about The Smashing Machine. I do still recommend this film to fans of the documentary of The Smashing Machine by the same name, and fans of Dwayne Johnson. If you like Dwayne Johnson movies, I mean, this may be, in my opinion, the best performance that he's done of his career. And I definitely think he had a career-defining performance Emily Blunt, I mean, she is just fantastic in this film. She adds so much to Mark Kerr. She adds so much to his. It's like the yin and the yang between both of them. You can feel that throughout the film, the overall toxicity in the relationship that they had, and the overall drama. And she brought the melodramaticness, and you can see the feeling of Mark Kerr in his eyes. You can feel like he was there, and he was there all the way through. So yeah, that is my thoughts about the Smashing Machine, and I'll give it a 2.5 out of 4 stars for now. It could go up from there depending on a rewatch, because I do plan on rewatching this again. But I think it's a really good film. I think it's a good film. It's definitely worth seeing. I'll probably maybe bump it up to 3. Maybe. I'll probably maybe bump it up to 3. Give it. Yeah, I'll bump it up to 3 because of the character performances. I think they pretty much stand out a little bit more to me than just the overall narrative and the overall story. So I'll give it that. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Smashing Machine. Tell me if you guys are planning on watching this film. Liking and sharing and subscribing to the page. And thank you all. Appreciate the comments and everything else. Let me know about what film recommendations that you want me to watch and see. If there's any, let me know. Tell me that down in the comment section. I'm planning on doing a few more videos. I got some reactions for you and coming up in a little bit. But yeah, thank you guys for liking and subscribing and following the channel. I plan on doing movie reviews down the road as well. The Black Phone 2 is coming out. I've seen trailers to that. That looks actually pretty good. What else is coming out? Of course, Predator Badlands is coming out. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Oh yeah, and Marty Supreme. That's with Timothy Chalamet. I heard that was gonna be good, and it's actually directed by Benny Safdie's brother, John Safdie. So I think that's gonna be pretty good from what I saw in the trailer. So yeah, thank you all for watching and liking and everything. So yeah, I'm out. Peace.